Hey pals, welcome back to another week at Cold Stuff and Chill headquarters. Drawing a blank on what to say here. I don't have any mini brands to open this week, unfortunately.
Because
Kind of
you already done
stinks.
opened them.
I already done open them all. I thought I was gonna save them all and then like have them just sprinkle out throughout the month, and then immediately after like maybe a day or two they were all opened. I had one even that I was gonna mail to Ashlee, and I opened that too
It's okay.
because I cannot be stopped. I love tiny things.
Do you want to talk about the other tiny thing that you got? Well, I think you got it last week, but the the brie.
Oh,
Well,
guys. Oh, okay. So, as you may or may not know, you should know. It is almost Halloween time, baby. It is August, which means all of our favorite discount home goods stores, aka Marshalls, aka TJ Maxx, aka Home Goods, baby, they have out their fall collections. And guess what? I found it was a tiny little, like, single serving size pumpkin ceramic. It said it's specifically for baked brie. It's like a Dutch oven. It's a tiny ceramic Dutch oven that's shaped like a pumpkin. It is the most cottagecore and wonderful thing I've ever seen. Ugh, I love it. So I had to get the cheese, right, to go in the cheese pumpkin. So now in my fridge I have a little snack ready for me this afternoon. I'm gonna do baked brie. I'm gonna drizzle some honey on top, sprinkle some little chopped pecans, and then dip my little apples in there and my little breads in there. And oh my god, I can't wait. Nothing brings me joy in life like food. Well, and then I showed Ashlee my little pumpkin, and then she's like, oh crap. So she went to TJ Maxx and there wasn't a little pumpkin. So then I went and got another little pumpkin. So now we have matching little pumpkins. So cute.
honestly, like I don't freak out about a lot of the stuff. And it wasn't on TikTok, but like a lot of the stuff that everyone else is freaking out about. But like when Devin showed me that, I was like, no, I need to
Mm-hmm.
have a little Dutch oven pumpkin. Fully plan on putting like a spinach artichoke dip in it or like
Mm-hmm.
buffalo chicken dip in it and just a nice accoutrement to a warm accoutrement to a charcuterie board.
Right.
I fully plan on using mine year round because it's cottage core. It's
Mm-hmm.
transversible.
It transcends the boundaries of Halloween.
Right. It's not like a jack-o'-lantern, it's a
Mm-hmm.
pumpkin.
Yeah. It's a
People
summer gourd. It's a fall gourd. It's a winter. You eat pumpkin pie around Christmas time, right? Or is that just a Thanksgiving thing?
Yeah, I mean, people do that.
Like, full disclosure, too, my body is not a temple this weekend. Like, literally, the only thing I've eaten since Friday, which is 2 days ago, I got a 20 count of Caribbean jerk Buffalo Wild Wings. Um, and so I've been eating that, and then also I have chocolate cake. So all I've eaten really is spicy chicken wings and chocolate cake. So my body is hurting already. And then I'm also a little bit lactose intolerant, so
You're really gonna get fucked up on that brie.
I'm really gonna get fucked up on that brie.
Also, like you could do far worse than Caribbean jerk wings. Like,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, it's not the most spicy of foods, but I am white and unseasoned, so
I
that
mean,
was like my limit.
I have like the bottles of the sauce that you can get from like Walmart, and I just put that on my chicken nuggies and
Hmm.
French fries a lot. So it really is. I think actually Caribbean jerk sauce is like the superior Buffalo Wild Wing sauce.
It's so good. So good. I don't understand the people that'll go to Buffalo Wild Wings and then order like the super, super hot ones. Because at a certain point, the only flavor is spicy. And it's
Yeah,
not fun and it doesn't feel good. You're just doing it to
to
punish
show
yourself.
off.
Maybe that's why. Maybe they're just like masochists and this is like foreplay for them is to eat really spicy wings.
Okay, but like, have you seen hot ones?
Mm-hmm.
So I think like those sauces have more flavor even though they're spicy because like the people will go in and be like, oh wait, this is a really good flavor, and they're like, oh wait, no, there's the heat. But yeah, I think that like the Buffalo Wild Wings super hot sauce is like just manufactured to cause pain,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's really just like a like swinging your dick around kind of move where dudes are like, I'm going to eat these super spicy wings. And usually it's like traditional wings because they're white men and feel like they have something to prove. And, you know.
And, like, this might be a controversial opinion, too, but, like, the people that go to B-dubs and order the bone-in wings,
What are you doing?
What are you doing? They're so much more difficult to eat. They're messy. And, guys, it's just so much easier to basically get a chicken nugget. I don't get it.
Dipped in sauce.
But, like, the thing about me is, though, I don't want to have to work hard for my food. Like, I just want it presented to me so that I can just, like, pop it in my mouth.
Like, let's say you go somewhere and they have fried chicken and chicken tenders. I'm going to go for the chicken tenders first. I'm not going to go for the fried chicken because it's the same experience, except for... Actually, chicken tenders are better. I'm just going to say it because it's a even coating of breading. You don't have the weird veiny bits.
They're more shaped for dipping, too.
Right.
You can get more sauce in there. And for me, part of the joy of a chicken tender or chicken nugget is copious amounts of dipping sauce. I like how this is a true crime podcast, but literally we just spent the last 5 minutes talking about cheese and chicken.
It's a full experience.
This isn't really a true crime podcast. This is more of like a two girls gossip and also talk about
True crime
occasionally. And then interject the true crime with more gossip.
and chicken nuggets.
Oh, so many chicken nuggets.
I think I'm going to go to Target and try those like spicy veggie nuggets.
Oh, I've seen. Yeah.
Ever since Wendy's stopped selling their spicy chicken nuggets and now there's a void in my life for spicy chicken nuggets that are easily accessible to me at like 11 p.m. I'd probably prefer a chicken nugget, but like honestly, veggie nuggets don't bother me that much because like when you get to like Wendy's and Burger King level, there's so much soy in those, like they're barely chicken, and I still eat those and they're fine. But yeah, I'm intrigued to try it, so maybe I'll have an update next week.
Please, I'm going to be waiting on the edge of my seat for the veggie nug update.
I will. Because, like, I like the Morningstar, like, popcorn nuggets. Just pop those bitches in an air fryer. And then you, like, feel better about yourself because you're like, ah, yes, I am a health goddess because I'm eating vegetarian today.
I air fried this instead of deep fried this.
I only used half the sauce because it's popcorn nuggets. No, in reality, those bitches are so covered in, Caribbean jerk sauce, like, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter what they were.
Really, it's just a vehicle to get the sauce into your mouth.
Ooh, it's Ashlee's story time.
Ashlee's story time.
What are you talking about this week?
I actually had, like, another specific story in mind because I haven't done a cult story in a while, but I started researching that, and instead, I just, like, put in my precursory Google search, and I found this story instead, so I was like, this is interesting. So I think I'm going to do this because there's actually some pretty recent developments on this that have come up that kind of changed the narrative of what happened. So today I'm going to be talking about Doris Duke and the untimely death of her art curator, Eduardo. So just to start off, Doris Duke was born in New York City on November 22nd, 1912, to Nanalee Holt Inman Duke and James Buchanan Duke, the founder of the American Tobacco Company, which manufactured, or maybe still manufactures, Newports, Duke Power, and the main benefactor of Duke College. So Jim Bob, he died kind of soon after. He died in 1925. He left almost his entire fortune to his 13-year-old daughter and his wife. However, 2 years later, due to some shady language in the will, Doris sued her mother and the other executors of the will to prevent auctions and sales of the real estate her father had owned, which actually ended up being incredibly beneficial in setting her up. She did receive the inheritance in increments. Obviously, we're not going to trust a 13-year-old with millions of dollars right away. But in 1947, she became the richest girl in the world to the tune of $100 million and just kept getting money until about 30.
She definitely owns that robe that's like silky and floor length and has the feather trim on the sleeves.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's definitely
and also
her vibe.
like one of those really long like Cruella de Vil style cigarettes for her Newports cigarette holder things. Yeah.
For her Newports, which I think at the time were still like a fairly classy cigarette. Now it's like every fucking hipster smokes Newports. As she was coming of age, she had all this money. She could do anything, and she said, why not? Like, the world is my oyster. I'm going to go out and do whatever the hell I want. So she studied singing and piano, and she enjoyed especially singing gospel and jazz music. During World War II, she worked in a canteen for sailors in Egypt to the salary of $1 a year. She was briefly a foreign correspondent for the International News Service. She wrote articles for Harper's Bazaar. She, at one point, moved to Hawaii and became the first non-Hawaiian woman to take up competitive surfing. She was an avid animal lover, had pet dogs and camels, and set up wildlife refuges with all this money. She had an interest in horticulture, and she helped one of her buddies set up the Malabar Farm State Park, where he dedicated a portion of the woods to her. And more importantly to the story, she curated an extensive art collection, mainly of Islamic and Southeast Asian art.
Okay, she's truly, like, before the Dos Equis man, the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah.
She has so many cool hobbies.
She really does. And she definitely gives the vibe of, like, 2010, 2015, like, millennial. Like, she's very kind of, like, boho. She's got a lot of, extravagant... like mandala type art, and she's just really kind of on that train. She loves plants, she loves animals,
I love her. Is it okay? Is she gonna be the bad guy?
She's gonna be the bad guy.
Fuck.
At this point, she was cool. In her 20s and 30s, she was cool. She was living life, but she was also extremely rich, so she had a ton of houses. And because she had a hard time staying in one place for too long, she had her main residence and childhood home, Duke Farms in New Jersey, that housed Duke Gardens, one of the largest public indoor botanical displays in the U.S., up until a few years ago when they closed down and, sent the plants elsewhere. She also owned Rudolph Valentino's Italian-themed villa, the Falcon Lair, in Beverly Hills. In 1930, she built an estate in Honolulu, which she called Shangri-La, which I think now has been transformed into an Islamic art institute. She retained 2 apartments in Manhattan, including a 9-room penthouse with a 1,000 square foot veranda and a smaller apartment off Times Square that was her office. Just her office. No biggie.
Casual.
Casual.
Office for what?
Like her financial stuff. I mean, she
Okay,
did dealings. She did dealings in art. She had charities. I mean, she had a shitload of money, so...
Fair.
I think that's just where she set up shop. And again, it was off Times Square, so it was probably a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
She also outfitted a Boeing 737 jet to travel around to collect arts and plants, and that actually contained a full-on bedroom setup so that she could just take a little nappy nap when she was going to her next location. And most importantly to the story, she had a 49-room English manor called Rough Point in Newport, Rhode Island. Now, I'm not sure which came first, Newport, Rhode Island, or the brand Newports, but that's also kind of important to the story.
Okay.
So things seem to be going swimmingly for Doris. She had everything. She had money, art, plants, animals, and she also had a gay bestie named Eduardo Tirala, who curated her art holdings for her.
I'm so mad that she turns into the bad guy because, I, up to this point...
I'm on board.
Love her.
Well, that's the thing. So she's young. She's exciting, and at some point she kind of turns into a bit of a Karen.
Ugh. I guess money will do that to you though, right?
Yeah. So everything came crashing down for her in 1966 when Eduardo went to visit Doris at her Rough Point estate, again in Newport, Rhode Island, on October 6th, and he kind of casually let slip that he was going to be moving to Hollywood to pursue a career in production design, and that he was really just visiting to kind of collect his belongings that he had, because I think he stayed with her quite a bit. They worked very closely. And while he is a gay man, he's still a man who, of course, doesn't listen to logic or reasoning. And when he kind of told his other friends that this was his plan, they were saying, yo, dude, she's off the rails. She is. At this point, she was getting really heavy into drinking and barbiturates. She is also never really been told no in her life. So it's not going to go well. You might want to just make this a phone call. And he was like, we're besties. What's the worst that could happen? So spoiler alert, homicide.
Oh. Okay.
He tells Doris, hey, I'm going to go to Hollywood. I'm going to make it big. I'm going to be an influencer. Of course, she does not take it well. She's a full-blown Karen at this point. She's never really been told no, like I said. And so they get into this loud and lengthy argument where she's basically just like trying to manipulate him into staying. Like, we've seen this on TikTok where Karens are just like, please, please stay. And so,
Yeah.
how I'm assuming this argument went, and the staff at the estate was like, we got to make ourselves scarce. So they were just kind of like watching for them to leave, and they noticed that they do leave. And I'm guessing probably just to stay out of line of fire so she don't also like punt them across the yard. Doris and Eduardo leave. They're still arguing, and they kind of start driving away in Eduardo's rented Dodge Polara station wagon, and this is where the details start to get a little bit hazy. According to Doris, when they get down to the gate, Eduardo, who had been driving, got out of the car to open it, leaving the engine running, but with the parking brake engaged and the transmission in park. Doris said that she had moved to the driver's seat so that she could drive the car through. Eduardo could shut the gate behind the car, and then they could continue on to wherever they were going. Doris said at this point she released the parking brake, shifted into drive, but wouldn't you know it, like her silly little lady brain got so confused and overwhelmed, and she accidentally hit the gas pedal at full force instead. So this caused the car to take off, and according to Doris, she rammed into Eduardo in the semi-open gates, which pinned him to the gates and kind of like knocked him through the gates, and then ran across the street and directly into a tree that was across from the property. Again, this is exactly what happened. She just got overwhelmed before she had even known what it was happening. Eduardo was dead. He was found trapped underneath the rear of the car and pronounced dead at the scene, and after kind of a rushed autopsy, it was determined that he had died immediately upon impact. That, you know, there was no suffering, there was nothing going on. It just, as soon as it was hit, he was dead. The police arrived at the scene, and they collected some evidence, and they were like, something doesn't really add up. So they kind of started a little bit of an investigation. Now you'd be thinking, this seems to one degree or another kind of an open and shut homicide case.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you'd be wrong. The Newport police ruled the death as accidental, and while Eduardo's family won a wrongful death lawsuit, they filed against Doris in 1971, where she was found negligent for his death. Each of his 8 siblings only ever received $5,620 after they paid off all their legal fees. And suspiciously enough, the court transcripts could not be found in the local newspaper archives where they should have been filed, and the police files kind of went missing altogether. Doris, she went on living her life. Like, at one point, she stabbed one of her lovers and got away with it, and was just, like, not a great person.
No.
But she ended up passing away in 1993 at 80 years old after complications from knee surgery stemming from her getting injured trying to walk too soon after a facelift, which honestly is kind of what she deserves.
Yeah, I agree.
But she left most of her nearly $1 billion estate to charity, leaving some money to her heroin addict nephew's twin children, who during their childhood were confined to a feces-filled basement, locked in their rooms, given scalding hot baths, which isn't really important to the story, but it kind of just proves how fucked up this whole family was. Mm-hmm. Like, there was drug issues, there was mental health issues, there was just a lot of stuff going on that was not okay. And she's like, we'll fix this with money. She also gave a lot of money to charity. Let's fast forward to now, nearly 30 years after her death. Something just still didn't sit right with the locals of Newport, and that's why in 2020, Peter Lance, a professional journalist and Newport native, took another look at the case and the research that he was doing for his book, Homicide at Rough Point. He was the one who had discovered that the court documents were missing from the newspaper archives, and that he managed to track down their location, but he never, I think, ended up finding the police records. And he kind of got involved with some crime scene experts to see if Doris's story held up to modern science and knowledge about car accidents and all of that. So his findings actually proved the investigation had been compromised and corrupt from the start. For example, the state medical examiner had been retained as Doris's personal physician, like literally on the way to the exam, and he was therefore bound by doctor-patient confidentiality. Also, after the shamefully short investigation and the case had been closed, the death had been ruled accidental, Doris began making significant philanthropic contributions to the city of Newport, established a Newport Restoration Foundation, which renovated 84 of the city's colonial buildings, and she donated $10,000 to the local hospital that she had been taken to the night of the accident. And perhaps most curiously, the police chief during the time of the case, Joseph Radisay, retired to Florida within a year of the accident, buying 2 condos for himself, and was succeeded by the former lead detective on Doris's case, instead of the person that should have succeeded him, who was the boss of the detectives. I don't know what that is, but basically the person who had the most seniority and was highest up in the department got passed over for the kind of lower lead detective on the case. All of this kind of prevents strong evidence that there was an extensive cover-up to this situation. Peter, the author of the book, did some investigation into Doris's account of what happened and found it to be inconsistent with the evidence that ended up being presented, and that she was also a little bit of a flip-flopper on some of her retellings of the story. He found first that the parking brake couldn't have been released the way that she said it had. It just wasn't possible. That almost all of Eduardo's injuries were above the waist, minus a broken hip, and I think he had a broken leg as well, suggesting that he wasn't trapped between the car and the gates when it went through the gates, that he was on the ground when he was fatally hit and drug. There was no blood or skin on the gate itself, but there was blood and skin on the street behind it, suggesting, again, that he wasn't ever trapped in between the gates, that he was on the ground and drug. That the deep grooves left under the Polara's rear tires suggested it wasn't a little, oopsie, I hit the gas instead of the brake, that she had to have, like, stomped on the gas while holding the brake down to get that sort of momentum to just, like, ram into him at that speed. Peter also discovered that the police chief, Joe, you know, the one that retired to Florida, he arrived on the scene pretty much immediately, whisking Doris away to the hospital and said, I'll handle this. And whenever any of the other detectives or police officers asked questions of him, like, hey, what's going on with this case, he would say, I'm the chief, what I say goes, now get out of my office.
Something's not adding up, you guys.
So when Doris was questioned, she answered like 4 softball questions, laying in her bed surrounded by dogs and lawyers. Never really fully interrogated, but just kind of doing the debutante thing, like, oh, I just don't know what happened. It was an accident.
Surrounded by dogs and lawyers?
Yeah. Well, and I'm picturing Pomeranians. Like, I'm picturing the robe. I'm picturing the Pomeranians. Like a real kind of Jeffree Star situation where she's just like, I don't know, darling.
She has a fan. She's just like...
Yeah. A fan and her long-ass filter for her Newports. So, again, the records of the case just mysteriously were either misplaced or missing entirely, with important details just gone. And in Peter's book, he suggests that the evidence was consistent with Doris hitting Eduardo with the car, yeeting him out into the street, and then when he landed in the street, coming to a stop, and then taking off again and hitting him and running him, you know, dragging him through the street. Just from expert testimony, again, from law enforcement professionals who have investigated this type of thing before. And in the book, he actually says, she was a living Cruella de Vil. She was notoriously paranoid, stingy, hyper-jealous and outrageous, incredibly troubled, driven by booze and barbiturates. Now, this was all just speculation. You know, you can say this is what we think happened. Until earlier this month, in August of 2021, when 68-year-old Bobby Walker, a retired Marine Corps veteran, went to Peter Lance and he was like, man, I read your book. I have a confession to make. It's time to spill the tea.
Ooh.
And he was like, I was there on the street where it happened. Bobby claims that in 1966, when he was 13 years old, the same age actually that Doris was when she inherited her fortune, he was out. He's a working kid. He's doing his paper route when he witnessed the whole scene go down between Doris and Eduardo. He said it happened pretty much shot for shot how Peter described in the book from the evidence. He said that he heard 2 people screaming at each other while he was out yeeting papers into yards, and that he heard the roar of a motor, a crash, the screaming of a man, the ever so slight skidding sound and deacceleration of the motor, a pause in the screaming, the man beginning to scream again, the roar of the motor again, the man's scream turning into the horror of no, and then another crash.
Ooh.
So this kid, you know, he's got big Boy Scout energy. He's a fully employed child. He's a good egg. He's going to run to the scene to see what's going on, to see if he can help, you know, offer any sort of assistance. So he comes up on the scene, and what he sees makes his blood run cold. Bobby witnessed Doris get out of the car. She took a few steps out of the car, was kind of blocking his view from the scene, and just stood towering over Eduardo, her former bestie, just looming over this mangled corpse. Which, this is kind of incredibly graphic, so trigger warning if you don't like graphic descriptions. But, like, if you've never watched someone or something die, especially in the case where there's a lot of adrenaline going through their body, before they do die, what happens is, like, the decedent is kind of in a state of confusion. They don't realize that they're dead yet. Their brain kind of has to catch up with their body dying, and you know that they're dead, but they don't know, and their body systems are just all sort of trying to catch up to the point where they slowly kind of quietly pass away. Mm-hmm. And they have movements and vocalizations, and what a normal person would do is, like, you know, try to comfort the person in their last moments. But she just stood there like a psychopath, just watching this guy die, like fully just standing up and watching him die under her car, not offering any sort of apology or comfort. And what Bobby also noticed is that she appeared totally unscathed, and no scratches on her face, did not appear to be disoriented. She was just in cold blood, standing there, which is suspicious because later she would be taken to the hospital for facial cuts and severe shock, suggesting that she, being an absolute Karen sociopath, went and actually smashed her own face up
Oh my God.
on her steering wheel. Probably the shock might have been acting. That, or she literally just bashed her face so hard. Mm-hmm. But when they got her to the hospital and the medical examiner looked at her, he was like, yes, these are consistent with her face hitting a steering wheel. So she just slammed her face into a steering wheel to injure herself.
Wow.
So at that point, Bobby, he's like, he's going to make his presence known. And he goes up and he's like, hey, do you need any help? I can go to a house, call the police. Like, I know everybody on the street. I can just go up and see if I can call the police and get some help. And she's flips the switch from cold-blooded killer to, like, just absolute intimidation tactic Karen 10.0. And she starts screaming at him, pointing her finger at him, yelling at him, telling him to get the hell out of here if he knows what's good for him. And he claims, he's like, I didn't know she was just disoriented from the crash or what. She didn't appear to be disoriented, but I don't know. So he said that he offered her help 2 more times, and each time she's like, get out of here now. So he just kind of went on his way and kept delivering his papers. After his paper route, he goes home and he tells his dad what he saw, and his dad at first is just like, hey, that's a funny story. Like, kids these days got a great imagination. Let's go eat some dinner. But then when it popped up on the next morning's newspapers, when Bobby went to go deliver them, his dad saw the paper and he was like, hey, you have got to keep your mouth shut. Do not tell anyone. Don't tell your siblings. Don't tell your mother. Don't tell your friends. Don't tell anyone. She's a rotten person with some very unscrupulous people on her payroll that will just make you disappear. Mm. And he said that he talked to his dad later about it, and his dad claimed that he was more concerned about his son losing his life than justice being served in this situation, because he's
that's
like,
fair.
He said that basically he wouldn't have put it past one of Doris's acquaintances to run up behind Bobby while he was on his newspaper route and just run him over with their car and claim another accident. After all this, he did go to the police, and they actually deemed his story credible after he kind of directed them to some of his friends who he had told before any of this came out, years ago, before the book came out. And the police said, this is interesting enough that we're going to put this on our follow-up file, but since Doris has already passed, a lot of the people who could be possibly affected by this have already passed. We're just going to put on a light follow-up, not really emergency. We'll look into it at some point. But really the only thing that they could probably get out of this is that the remaining family members could maybe get some more money.
Right.
But
from her estate or something.
Yeah. But that's pretty much it. Just
dang. Doris, cutthroat bitch.
Crazy heiress goes on a murder spree. But it's like I could see it, like just seeing some of how the Karens act in public, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah, and being a Karen with enough money to make your problems just like disappear.
I feel like this is Jeffree Star's future, honestly.
You know, I wouldn't be too surprised. I could see it for sure. And he would be surrounded by all his little Pomeranians. Just, I don't know what you're talking about, darling.
Devan's story time.
Ooh. What are you gonna talk about?
As a 30-year-old woman, there are very few things in this life that like bring me true joy. Obviously, food is one of them. We discussed that in length. Mm-hmm. And then like true crime, cults, murder, love it. But the other thing that's like, I just love is watching teenage melodrama, either reality or scripted. I don't care. I want to see these teens deal with adult issues that they should not be dealing with. I love it. Love to see it. Addicted to it. I just finished season 2 of Outer Banks, in which no parents are ever present. Shockingly. Some of the parents are murdering people. Other parents are in jail. Other parents are dead. One set of parents seemingly cares about their children, but they are in all of 2 scenes for the whole episode. So anyway, I digress.
Shows like Skins and
yes,
what's the other one?
Skins and Gossip Girl.
Yes.
And fucking, as
Sabrina.
I just said, Outer Banks and Riverdale and Sabrina. I love it. I will binge it. I don't care. And I have a theory that it's because these teenagers are written into adult scenarios, and that's what makes me feel okay about this. It's because, sure, they're portraying 16-year-olds, but they're dealing with very adult issues, so I don't feel as strange about it. Also, Pretty Little Liars, although I didn't really watch that one because the whole, like, Arya having an affair with a teacher thing was like, maybe we shouldn't be pushing this to teenagers. Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like that one, I watched a little bit of it, but it felt like it did not have a great message.
No. None of them do, but that one is particularly troubling, that they were just like, we're going to portray this really romantic relationship and, like, idealize it, but it's an adult sleeping with a 15, 16-year-old. Like, well, don't love it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't really watch the show. I just, especially after that. But wasn't he, like, in on the A drama? Like,
I think he might have been. For a brief period of time, I think he was A, if I remember correctly. It has been years and years since I've watched an episode of this, and I don't know how it ended, so.
Yeah, because, like, after that whole segue, it was just, like, I think I watched it a little bit with, like, you and your roommate, and then I was just like, this is too much.
Yeah. Not into it. Oh, also Vampire Diaries. Love that, too.
Yeah, Vampire Diaries. Well, and the continuation of all of that, because there's, like, the...
Legacies, and then... I think that's just Legacies, honestly. The one in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So, the story I picked today, it's got all of the above. It's got teen melodrama. It's got cult. It's got a murder. It is hitting 3 very just wonderful topics for me. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the vampire cult murders.
And vampires. Like Vampire Diaries. And Twilight.
Oh my god. Oh, this just couldn't get more perfect. Okay. So, we're just going to start from the beginning. And so, like with any other murderous asshole we talk about on this podcast, we have to talk about their childhood. Why? I don't know. I think it's maybe because we're looking for something traumatic to, like, justify their actions. Here we go. We're just going to talk about this gentleman. So his name is Rod. And of course, surprise, very shitty upbringing. So he was born on March 28th of 1980 to his parents, Sandra Gibson. Well, I guess we'll just say to his mother, Sandra Gibson, in Murray, Kentucky. His dad really wasn't super present in his life. So his mom did claim that he was born with his umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, which starved his brain of oxygen and led to some mental issues. This never is formally diagnosed. It's purely speculation based on behavioral issues that he has down the line, and it was developed later in his life. But when we get into the story, you'll probably be thinking, like, now that boy, he just ain't right. So I think Sandra might have been onto something with that. However, she's got her own issues. So, Sandra, she's pretty young when she has Rod. She's only 16. So, a lot of the time they would be living with her parents. So, when they weren't living with her parents, it was often in publicly funded housing that was, the reason that they were in and out of that housing is because it just wasn't a stable environment in the county in which they lived. It wasn't like a permanent residence when you went into that. So they were in and out of her parents' house. And Sandra, she was a exotic dancer and she was also a sex worker, so she was often gone during the nights as well. So Rod, when he's 5, unfortunately, he is essayed by his grandfather, the one that they are living off and on with. And this event, obviously, it affects Rod's mental health as he grows up, and rightfully so. I should, however, just make a little note that his grandfather is never charged with this. I don't think this is something that Rod admits to or that comes to light until later in Rod's life when he's, like, trying to make excuses for himself.
Mm-hmm.
But, in my opinion, like, if a child is telling you they're being assaulted, they're not going to make that shit up. So
Yeah.
we're just going to assume that he was essayed by his grandfather, although that was never, like, proven in court. So, anyway. It's also said that his mom was involved in vampirism. So she was actually charged as well with solicitation to commit SA on a 14-year-old victim as part of a vampire initiation rite. So, yeah, everyone in this story is a little bit fucked up. So this is discovered after she gets caught writing love letters to this 14-year-old, where she's, like, claiming to be his bride, and then she mails this kid a key to her house, trying to get him to come live with her. And then she also had just, like, a reputation around town for talking to other minors in the area and trying to get them involved with vampirism. So his mom, since she's actively involved in this vampirism cult scene, whatever you want to call it, kink club, who knows, it's not really, like, a huge shock that Rod also gets involved in this as well, as she's, like, the only parent figure in his life. So, as we know, Rod's mom is the only one raising him. Again, they're in and out of grandparents' house, but for the most part, it's just mom. However, Rod does travel back and forth quite a bit from Murray, Kentucky to a town called Eustis, Florida, where apparently his biological dad lived, but it sounds like both sides of the family had ties to this town. So Murray was a small town, super conservative, of course. It's in Kentucky. So Rod, the vampire, he struggles to fit in, obviously. He is considered a rebel and a bad boy by his classmates, and is just, like, constantly getting into trouble at school. And so in his teen years, he begins to skip out on school a lot and stay home reading about vampirism and painting. So he also began to walk around pretty constantly wearing a cloak and carrying a cane. He's, like, gone full goth, fully embraced this as leaning into his identity as an outsider at this point.
Like, dude, that kid's hardcore goth.
Yeah. He's wearing a cloak. It might be one of those long floor-length coats we're all probably familiar with when you think about, like...
Like a trenchy coat.
Yeah, like a trench coat. I'm also, like, a little thrown off by the fact that, like, this is a small town in rural Kentucky, and it seems that there's, like, a scene for vampirism. Like, I don't understand... It's just a weird thing for me. Anyways, that's not important here.
You'd be surprised. Like, there's, in some small towns, there's just, like, weird fucking, like, in mine, it's a meth cult.
I wonder if the meth cult is also into vampirism.
Meth's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, I mean, it can get you into all sort of wacky antics, so I wouldn't be too surprised.
Actually, short side note.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna go terribly into detail, but we did have some incidents, or we had an incident with some local teens that had gotten methed up, and then they got into a car accident, accidentally killed one of their friends in the car accident, but instead of calling the police like normal people, they actually like loaded the wrecked car up onto a trailer and hid it in a barn, and then like took their dead friend and hid him in a house for a few days.
When was that?
This was like, I want to say like
Recently?
5 years ago.
Oh,
like
wow.
5 years ago. But it was crazy because then his family was like, justice for this person that passed away. It's like, we all know what happened. Like, it's not like there was some unfair justice being played here. It was like, due to the actions of him and his friends, this is what happened. And it's unfortunate. Yeah, it's sad because addiction is a hell of a thing, but it's just like...
Well, then I'm sure that the people involved in that were probably charged with something at some point, right? Yeah.
Well, I think it's a felony, like, tampering with a body and tampering with the crime scene to the degree that they did it. But yeah, maybe they were also vampires or trying to do some kind of mummy or zombie resurrection thing.
Ugh.
I could see
Small
it.
towns are fucking wild, man. You think living in a city's weird. Nope. Anyway, back to Rod. So, he's a troubled youth, as we've established, and, like, between interrupting class, skipping school, and, like, a smattering of different behavioral issues and antics he's getting into, Rod ends up getting expelled from school in the 9th grade. And this basically is, like, where he begins to spiral down the path of no return. So, he ends up getting into drugs. Surprise. And he becomes addicted at the age of 14, and, like, this only gets worse when his mom, lovely woman that she is, ends up marrying a local drug dealer in 1995. So, Rod's new stepdaddy, he would supply him with drugs, helps him shoot heroin, teaches him about Satanism, but, like, not the friendly Satanism that we have at the Satanic Temple, like the bad kind where they're performing dark rituals and they just, like, get up to no good generally.
And, like, killing neighbors' cats and shit.
Yeah, like, the Satanic Panic kind of Satanism, not the, like, friendly, you know, charitable organization that is today's Satanic Temple. Anyway, I felt like I just needed to make that distinction here because I don't want people to be like, you're talking shit on the Satanic Temple when I don't know why I care because we talked a lot of shit about the Catholic Church last week. So, like, I might as well make it equal, but...
I feel like the Catholic Church deserves it, though, whereas this Satanic Temple is literally just an organization to give advocacy to people who maybe don't have a religious... Because, I mean, a lot of Satanists are actually just atheists who they feel that well, and they know, due to the laws of our country, that the only way they can have the advocacy that they need is through a religious temple. And so they're, like, just kind of lumped into this
that's fair.
blanket organization.
Yeah, I don't want to talk shit about Satanism because I really actually appreciate their organization as it is today, so...
Yeah.
Anyways... Around this same time where Rod is, like, getting into drugs and everything, he also gets into, like, an early internet-era RPG called Vampire the Masquerade. I believe it's, like, based loosely off of a graphic novel. But anyway, it's, like, this online forum. And eventually, a group of teens from Rod's area took it real world and formed a role-playing group called the Vamps. Again, I am shocked that in a small town, he's able to so easily find other people to play vampire with him.
And
it's
LARP.
like... Yeah, they're like, basically that's what they're doing. They're a LARPing group playing vampires. And, like, in my mind, right now, I'm picturing that goth group off of South Park. That is very much the vibe I'm getting from these kids. And so, like we just said, it's very much like your typical LARPing group. They basically just meet up and play pretend and dress up, like, harmless stuff. However, other members start getting a little bit freaked out when Rod starts taking things, like, a little too seriously. So they end up disbanding the group. I like to think that the group got back together after they dropped Rod and still got to hang out and be nerds together after Rod. I feel like maybe they just, like, ditched him and were like, okay, we're gonna go, like, play vampires without you now. I hope that for them. I feel like they were just a friendly group of theater dorks.
Yeah, and, like, now probably have, like, successful investment portfolios, but, like, back then we're just, like, nerdy.
Yeah. Well, and this was, like, mid-90s, so, like, that whole goth, like, grunge thing was pretty big, and maybe that's why there's so many vampires to be had around town, because, like, the whole goth grunge thing is, like, big, trendy moment, so...
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, goth isn't dead, though.
Oh, not by a long shot, but I think it was more, like...
It was more
that grunge
trendy.
rock scene. Yeah, it was a little more trendy then. So, anyways, after being dumped by his band of friendly nerds... Rod, he is on the hunt once again for a group of people who were more like-minded and more willing to take this whole, like, vampire thing seriously. So he doesn't want to just like dress up and play pretend. He wants to be a vampire. And it's during this like quest of self-discovery that he finds his new BFF Jaden, who already Jaden was like pretty deep into vampire culture, and he took Rod under his wing. They become fast friends, they're good buddies, and allegedly one night Jaden takes Rod out to a cemetery and they do like a ritual where they drink each other's blood. So like blood brothers, friends for life. Psych. After some time, even Jaden's like, wait, no, this dude takes it way too fucking far. So Jaden, who performs rituals and drinks blood, even thinks that Rod is like taking this a little too far. So Jaden and his group, they are like, no, we've seen Rod do some truly fucked up shit. Trigger warning right now, animal abuse coming up. Apparently they watched Rod like take a cat and threw it against a tree to kill it just for funsies.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And this isn't the only instance of animal abuse in this story, so I'll give you a trigger warning before the next time as well. So, rightfully so, Jaden and his band of vampires decide, snip snip, we're cutting Rod out the group. Bye. So, here's Rod. He has been cut from not one, but 2 teenage vampire groups in his small town. So, Rod decides it is time to, like, start his own cult. Take that, vamps. Take that, Jaden. This is the Rod show now. So, Rod, he enlists a group of teens, Dana Cooper, Scott Anderson, and Charity Kesey. And they're all, again, from Murray, Kentucky. Again, how the actual F is he finding all these vampire people in this small rural area? Like, I'm almost impressed by his acumen for, like, seeking out other vampires.
Well, and this was also, like, pre-Twilight, but it was also after Interview with the Vampire and, like,
It was, like, right in the era between Interview with the Vampire and Buffy. Because I think Buffy didn't that start in, like, 97, 98, somewhere around there. So it's, like, peak vampire times. So it's a moment in pop culture.
Everybody wants to be fucking Lestat.
Everyone wants to be both literally and physically fucking Lestat.
Yeah.
So... Anyway, so Rod, he now has his disciples. And so, of course, they need a spooky hangout spot. So they end up finding an old abandoned building in the woods near Kentucky Lake. And they dub it the Vampire Hotel. So here they decide that they meet up to do drugs together. They're performing vampire rituals. And during this time period, Rod really starts to hone in on his vampire persona. And he starts to tell people that he is a 600-year-old vampire named Visago. And according to others during this time, the vampire formerly known as Rod also begins to develop like a weird god complex and starts to lose touch with reality, more so than he had before. So, unfortunately, much to Rod's dismay, his cult comes to a halt when his mom decides they're going to move down to Eustis, Florida, because her parents had moved down to Eustis, Florida. Again, I think his dad actually lives there as well, so there's like some weird family ties happening here that I'm unclear on. But anyways, so this doesn't stop Visago, the 600-year-old trapped in a teenage Kentuckian's body. No, no, no. So he begins to assemble a new troupe once in Florida and ends up finding one of his most loyal followers in the form of Heather Wendorf, a 16-year-old girl from Eustis High. So these two meet. They become fast friends, bonding over goth shit, vampire shit, getting into trouble shit. And they spend like a ton of time together. However, Rod, he is actually dating Heather's best friend, Janine. So they end up forming like this weird love triangle vampire cult thing. And so now Rod, Visago, Mr. 600-year-old teenage vampire, he is officially on Vampire Clan number 4.
Which he found 3 of them in his small town.
Yeah.
3
separate vampire clans to hang out and do vampire shit with. Like, I am amazed. Truly, shock and awe. So, alas, again, Rod runs into a hiccup with his vampire cult when his mom tells him one day, guess what, son, we're moving back to Kentucky. So, this really pisses Rod off. And on the day that they're supposed to be moving, Rod's mom walks in on him and his girlfriend Janine sucking each other's blood. One thing leads to another, and now mom and son are fighting, and it gets so bad that they draw knives on each other. No one, thankfully, ends up stabbed, but, like, this just goes to show this family is toxic. It is bad. It is no good. Everyone here is a little bit unstable. So, despite this big blow up, this big knife fight with his mom, Rod does end up moving back to Kentucky with her, and thankfully is able to pick up right where he left off with his old vampire buddies. So, yay Rod, or Visago, or whatever he's going by now, he's, back in step with his old vampire crew. So, we're going to take a brief moment for some teenage soap opera antics. And it's going to get confusing. Just hold on to your butts, guys. So, Rod, he has his girlfriend back in Florida, Janine, with whom he said they would continue to date long distance. However, when he gets back to Kentucky, he begins a relationship with one of his cult members, Chastity. But Chastity, she goes to summer camp later that year, and so while she's away, Rod starts another relationship with a girl named Shy, who was pregnant by another man. So Rod is like, Shy, I'm going to support you. I'll be the baby daddy. I'll raise it like my own. And the two get engaged. Now, this relationship ends when Chastity gets back from camp and finds this out. So then Rod dumps pregnant Shy and tells her if she doesn't leave him alone, he is going to murder her and her unborn baby. So none of that's particularly relevant to the story, but I just love the teenage soap opera antics we have here. Anyway, so teenage drama aside, Rod begins to get very violent at this time, both with his girlfriend Chastity and with others involved in the group. And now, guys, here's your other trigger warning for animal abuse. Fast forward about 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it. So, Rod and Scott, one of those other vampire clan members, they actually end up breaking into a local humane society where they beat and torture 40 dogs and kill 2 puppies. Like, these 2 kids are truly sick in the brain. So, this is the point in which, like, Rod is a very violent person and it's only getting worse for him. So, more teenage drama moment. Rod's life, like I said, it's just like descending into madness and chaos right now. And then he finds out that his girlfriend Chastity is pregnant with his baby. And Rod is like not pleased because at this time he and Scott are pursuing relationships with both Janine, Rod's girlfriend, and I think Scott's trying to get at Heather back in Florida because they're like corresponding back and forth writing love letters like vampire style. And so Rod is like, no, this isn't going to fit in with my player lifestyle. I don't want to be tied down with a baby. So, teenage logic. What does Rod do to, deter this relationship and father being a daddy? So he decides that in order to get out of that relationship with Chastity, he needs his other girlfriend, Heather, to be living with him. And so he decides to hatch a plan to get her to move to Kentucky. So he tells Scott that Heather's parents are being abusive towards her and that they need to go to Florida to rescue her. And so at some point, Scott actually does end up asking Heather about this when Heather denies that there's anything like going on weird with her parents. Still, for some reason though, Scott believes Rod because pure pressure. Rod is the king vampire of the vampire group, so obviously Rod is telling the truth. So Rod spends like a ton of time talking to Scott about how awful Heather's parents are, how they're stuck up and they're mean and hoity-toity, and how they are going to drive as a clan down to Florida to rescue Heather and Janine because no vampire teen left behind. This is a rescue mission. So I don't exactly know what Janine was on because she actually like assists in this unnecessary rescue mission by sending the boys a map of Heather's home and letting them know what doors they typically left unlocked at night because again, Eustis is a small town, so it's not unusual for people to leave doors unlocked. So allegedly the girls thought Rod was kidding about this whole like rescue mission, and so they are taken very by surprise when one night in November of that year, Rod calls up the girls on the phone, says, "Hey girls, I'm in Eustis. I got the rest of the cult with me. I'm here to pick you up. So I've got Scott, we got Dana, we got a very pregnant Chastity. We're here to get you. Come to your daddy." So everything starts to unfold then. This is on November 25th of 1995. So Rod, again, on this phone call, he tells the girls, Janine and Heather, that they need to get their shit together. They need to skip class the next day so that they could all run away together. So, of course, they obliged. The next day, they end up, skipping out on school. The whole crew is together. They end up in a cemetery where Heather performs a blood ritual that, quote unquote, allows her to cross over to being a real vampire, allegedly. So it's actually during this ceremony that Rod actually suggests to Heather that they kill her parents. Heather claims that she told Rod not to do that at this point, but Rod says it was actually Heather that planted this idea in his head. So, who knows? It's a he said, she said situation at this point, and it's still, like, I don't think we're ever going to know what actually happened. But he also alleges that Heather had given him directions on where to go and how to do it. And unfortunately, like I said, we only have the he said, she said about it all. We don't actually know what's true here. But anyways, I digress. So that night after that blood ritual ceremony, Rod and Scott end up taking LSD. And then while they're, tripping balls on LSD, they go to Heather's house, where they enter through the garage per Janine's map and info about the house. So at this point, Heather claims that she is unaware of where the boys had gone or what they were doing. So her and her gal pals are hanging out in the cemetery still. I find Heather incredibly sus in all of this, personally. So anyway, gal pals in the cemetery, Rod and Scott, they are at Heather's house. They initially go in armed with clubs, I think, baseball bats, but they actually end up ditching the clubs because they find crowbars in the garage. And so they go through the garage, they enter into the home where they find Heather's dad asleep on the couch. So Rod ends up bludgeoning him to death with the crowbar. And at the time, Heather's mom is in the shower, so she didn't hear any of the commotion happening. And so after this, she gets out of the shower, she goes down to the kitchen to pour herself a hot cup of coffee because she's an absolute maniac and wants to drink caffeine at night. I could never go off Queen. But, so as she's getting her coffee ready, Rod comes into the kitchen and startles her, obviously. So she throws this scalding cup of coffee at him. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't serve any purpose other than to piss Rod off and makes him act out even more violently, if that's even possible. So she ends up meeting the same fate as Heather's father and is beaten to death with that crowbar. Allegedly, Rod said this was supposed to have been Scott's job, but he was unable to go through with it. He chickened out, so Rod takes over. So once the murders are committed, the two boys, they end up branding the bodies with their cult symbol. They then stole their credit cards, loaded up on some supplies, and they take the family vehicle, I believe it's a Ford Escape, and they decide to get the F out of Dodge. So, fast forward, it's later that evening, murders have been committed, houses have been burgled, and Heather's 17-year-old sister returns home from work to find the crime scene. So, she calls the police and immediately knows that it was probably Rod. So she lets them know that she suspects Heather and her boyfriend had something to do with it. Meanwhile, after the murders, Rod and Scott, they end up picking up the rest of the vampire clan in the getaway car. So they swapped out the plates. I think they probably took it off whatever vehicle they came down in. And then they planned to head to New Orleans to continue on as one big happy cult family, because where does a cult of vampires need to reside but New Orleans? It just makes sense, right?
The homeland.
The homeland, yeah.
Ancestral plane.
Exactly. The ancestral breeding grounds of these vampires. So they're heading to Louisiana. So while they're in the car on the way to their new life in New Orleans, Heather claims that it's at this point that Rod lets her know what happened to her parents. Heather, girl, they have the credit cards, they have your vehicle, your parents' vehicle. What do you think has happened? Like,
Why
honey,
is this a mystery to you?
how is this a mystery? So either they have stolen your parents' car and credit card, or something even worse has happened. Either way, you slice it, honey, not good.
Well, and it's like, okay, I can see the thefts and stuff, but it's to steal the credit cards, to steal the car, for that to be your plan to get to New Orleans, and just to not have any questions about, like, well, aren't they going to come for us? Aren't we going to have to steal some more credit cards? Aren't we going to have to steal another car? Like, who's going to report this stuff? They're going to report it missing pretty soon. Like,
well, and you have to think too, like, they literally just bludgeoned 2 people to death. So there's got to be, like, they can't be just like clean hands, clean clothes. Like,
yeah,
there's got to be some evidence in what just happened. So apparently Heather, you know, she either disregards the blatant evidence right in front of her face, I don't know, but she says that after she found this out, she was actually just too scared to call the police, even though she was very distraught over her parents being dead. She was just afraid of what might happen to her. This is like her defense that she's making. So as the teens are on the run, the police actually have put a warrant out for all 5 of them, actually in the city of Baton Rouge. Now, the only reason they know to look in Baton Rouge is because Chastity, the pregnant one, Rod's girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, baby mama, she had called her mom back home in Kentucky and asked for money and accidentally let it slip where they were heading. And stupid teen move, although I like to think that maybe Chastity wasn't being a stupid teen. Maybe she just realized at this point she was in too deep and needed out. But this call is traced by the police, so they are able to narrow down that they are in the Baton Rouge area at this time. So it's not long after that phone call that the group is located at a hotel where they all end up surrendering on Thanksgiving Day. So they are busted, thank God. They're all pretty much immediately taken into custody. They're all interviewed so the cops can begin to piece together what had happened. And surprisingly, Rod immediately confesses, and thankfully he was being recorded so they get it on tape, and he's like, busted. But doesn't end here, guys. So not long after confessing, Rod ends up rescinding that statement and claims that he is being framed by a rival vampire group. None other than the group he had been kicked out of by his ex-BFF, Jaden. Thankfully, the police are like, dude, you're lying. No, that's bullshit. So Rod quickly comes up with another story that he suffers from chronic blackouts and had no memory of what had happened, even though he already confessed to doing the murders and what had happened. Stupid teens. That's all this comes down to, basically. Heather, on the other hand, she denies knowing anything at all. She stuck to the story that she had no involvement whatsoever. Interestingly, though, after this story breaks, some of Heather's classmates come forward to say that she had talked about wanting to murder her parents. However, this is unfortunately just like hearsay evidence, so it doesn't hold up in court. She's never indicted for any of these claims, and she basically ends up walking away from this whole situation like pretty much scot-free. So back to Rod, he ends up sitting in custody for a few years, and then in February of 1998 he goes to trial for armed burglary, armed robbery, and 2 counts of first-degree murder. So he ends up getting the death sentence and is the youngest person ever to have been on death row until the year, I guess, ever in Florida. So, like, not of all time, but it's in the year 2000, so just a couple years later, when the Supreme Court ends up passing a law that a person has to be 17 or older when they committed a crime to be sentenced to death. And since Rod was only 16 at the time of the murders, his sentence ends up getting changed just to life in prison. So Scott, he is also convicted of the same charges as Rod, and he is sentenced to life in prison and not the death penalty. However, in 2018, his sentence ends up being reduced to 40 years, and he will be eligible for parole in 2031. So Charity, she receives 10.5 years in state prison for her role in all this. Dana is given 17.5 years. Both have already been released from prison and are out living their life as free women now. And that brings us to Heather. She doesn't go to jail. She serves no time. She ends up moving away from Eustace and has a very strained relationship with her remaining family, which, duh, of course, because it seems very much like she might be guilty, in part at least, of her parents' murder. But apparently she's married now, she has kids, and lives a pretty low-key life, so that is the Vampire Cult Murders. I don't know what happened to Janine, to be quite honest with you. I think she probably was much like Heather and got off pretty much scot-free, although you would think she could at least be considered accessory to murder because she provided them with info on the house and, like, the maps and things, but...
Yeah, but then there's, like, the argument that she didn't know what they were planning. Like, maybe they were just planning... She thought that they were planning to just get Heather's shit or, you know...
Yeah, that's true.
Like, there's a lot of arguments you could make on that. And it sounds
I feel like this story would be a very good plot line for Riverdale to go down. It seems like a very Riverdale-esque story.
I mean, the parents aren't really involved in Riverdale anyway, are they?
No, not as much as they need to be.
Better than that weird, like, hinted at twincest plot line.
Well, and also that plot line where 15-year-old Betty goes into a biker bar and performs an initiation rite to be in part of the biker gang, in which she strips at the age of 15 for a room full of adult biker men. That happened on Riverdale.
Also, that's the thing that bothers me about teen dramas is that they try to, like, make stuff really, like, they tend to make stuff kind of PG. But, like, at the same time, like, if kids are watching Riverdale, they're probably watching, like, Sons of Anarchy. And they know what happens when you're a female that gets initiated into a biker gang. And it's not just stripping.
No. Although, that's pretty bad, too. So.
Yeah.
Oh, teen drama, I swear.
I don't remember. I don't know. I went into high school thinking I was going to have teen drama, and it was a disturbing lack of teen drama. Like,
maybe that's why I'm so, like, into teen dramas now, because I never had a dramatic teenage years, so now I'm just like, man, let's live vicariously through these 28-year-olds pretending to be 16-year-olds. That's what I need in my life.
I think the most dramatic thing that happened at my school was actually, because ours was, like, K through 12, because it was such a small district, so it was all just, like, one large building, but when I was in 8th grade, there was, and it was actually kind of sad, there was a girl that was, like, pregnant, and her boyfriend was in his 20s, and the mom was just, like, the mom of the girl was so happy. She's like, you know, this is a blessing. We're so happy about this. And the girl, like, never came back to school. Which was sad, but, like, she basically found out she was pregnant, like, right before graduation. So it was just kind of like, she wasn't even really showing. We just never saw her again. So that's the most dramatic thing that happened, I think.
I can't think of anything. We did have one fight that happened at my school one year, and there are, leading up to the front doors of our high school, like, a flight of, like, 10 to 12 stairs, concrete stairs. And one fight happened during our lunch period in which someone ran up to another person, tackled them off the top of the stairs, and they just, like, went flying off, and that was pretty cool. We also had another one where this girl, she was, like, literally a tiny pixie of a woman, just so small, but she loved to scrap. Like, she was a fighter. And she takes this girl by the hair and just, like, bashes her head into a locker. And the girl is, like, twice her size. It was like, okay, little shrimp woman, go off. Like, you didn't mess with her because she was tiny, but she was, like, Mighty Mouse. She would beat your ass.
I mean, we had a lot of, like, lesbian fights. That was the thing at our high school, like, that we had a community of lesbians, but they were constantly fighting.
Oh, yeah, because they were all dating each other, probably getting mad at each other.
Which, you know, some stereotypes are true, especially in a small town high school. Like, half of them are married to men now, which, you know, they can be bisexual, that's fine. They identified as lesbians then, and now they're bisexual, whatever. But, yeah, they all would get into just, like, fights in the bathroom. Usually when there was, like, a male cafeteria monitor, so he couldn't exactly go into the bathroom and break up the fight. And then they'd, like, fight, like, quick and dirty, and then they would just, like, come out and it would be fine. Like, they never faced any real consequences for it, I feel. They're just, like, fighting, and then they're like, okay, we're fine. We got it out of our system.
Good for them. Gotta beat some ass sometime. That's the only way to get that teenage angst out, is just to really beat someone up.
Yeah.
Allegedly. I've never beat someone up, so I couldn't tell you for certain.
Actually, now that I think about it, the most drama that we had was when we were in junior high. We also had an incident where a girl was, like, piercing people's ears behind the dumpster, like, out at recess with, like, just regular, like, Claire's earrings.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah. I think she only got through, like, one person before that was stopped, but...
Well, good. Yeah, that's maybe not something we should be doing by the dumpster, especially. Jesus.
Yeah. It was just, like, dumb shit like that, which is not, like, particularly dramatic. It's just, like, a interesting little blip on the radar.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, should we get into tarot time?
Yeah.
It's tarot time.
I don't know that we'll ever be able to beat the song that we did.
No.
It was so good.
It's tarot time. Baby,
Tarot
it's tarot time. Let's find out what's gonna happen this week.
So for a tarot reading, first I have the Four of Swords. This is like stressed or frustration. The next I have the Devil, which is like toxicity. This can be like addiction, or this can just be like someone that's kind of toxic in your life being tethered, like the little unicorns. And then I have the Three of Cups after that. So that's kind of saying like there's a period of like frustration and toxicity that's going on right now, but that's going to come together with like a period of collaboration. And like things are going to get better from that. Then we have the Queen of Pentacles reversed, which that's like loss of security or like concern. And then Judgment reverse, which is like kind of like karma is happening. So you're in a unsecured position. There's like some karma happening, and some like doubt again with the unsecured, some doubt going along with that, but it will come together because we have the Two of Cups upright, and that is just like coming back together, bringing everything back together. Maybe you're in a situation where stuff is just kind of difficult right now, but through collaboration, you'll regain that security. So, pretty good tarot reading this week.
Yeah. Snaps for that. All right, so to wrap it up, FUs for the week. Riverdale.
Trisha Paytas.
Yeah, Trisha.
What the fuck you doing, honey?
Look, I still enjoy Trisha Paytas' content. Trisha, get it together. It's a little much. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, especially because, like, literally a week ago, she was saying, I would never do something, like, go on, what is it, Drama Alert, that's Keemstar's show?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, I would never go on that because I am above that, and, you know, I don't want to hurt Ethan. And then she literally goes on Mom's Basement.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, you can argue she said Drama Alert, not Mom's Basement, but it's like, she knows what she's doing. She's like,
yeah.
And she said, if he ever had Gabby Hanna on his show, that would be devastating to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, also saying, like, oh, it's not that desperate that I have to get involved with Keemstar. I don't know. Just fuck that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know that I was a Trisha stan, like, 4 episodes, 5 episodes ago. But things have taken an odd turn, and I hope that they take another odd turn to, like, return to some semblance of normalcy. That would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
I can't honestly think of any other FUs off the top of my head. I'm so G-dang tired right now that I can't think straight.
OnlyFans.
What did they do?
You did not hear?
No.
So OnlyFans decided to send out like emails basically saying that explicit sex content would not be allowed on their platform anymore, that you could do nudes.
That's the whole purpose of OnlyFans, isn't it?
Yeah, but they wanted to secure some like financing for something, so they sent out that stuff. And I think I saw something earlier today or maybe yesterday where they sent out another email saying, "Hey, we are willing to work on this," because they already started like hemorrhaging money and creators started leaving their platform. But it's like
Well,
Tumblr.
yeah. Rightfully so. That's the whole purpose of OnlyFans is for porn, and you're gonna take the porn off of it,
Right.
honey? No.
Although I have been appreciating all of like the fake news like satire sites like The Onion putting out things where it's like a man who does creative lawn mowing, artistic lawn mowing, delighted at the announcement that OnlyFans is getting rid of sexual content so that his products can really shine.
Oh, Jesus. So yeah, F you to them too. But yeah, other than that, I think I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it up here. And just my words of wisdom are going to be get sleep, drink caffeine.
Don't join a vampire cult.
Don't join a vampire cult. Don't stay up past your bedtime. Don't inherit a lot of money and then murder your BFF bestie. Don't do that. Definitely don't do that.
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us here on another week. We will see you next Sunday or whatever day you choose to listen. There's not a limit on it. We don't care. Just listen at some point. Links in the description below, in the wherever it is, on whatever platform. You know where it is. You're smart. You'll figure it out, as we always say. And thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.